code golf? What is it, and is it even practical? Well, for the second question, yes and no, and we'll get back to that in a moment. And for the first question, it's recreational code problem solving, where you attempt to take a problem and solve it in the fewest amount of characters possible. And you are given a score based on the amount of bytes your solution occupies. The lower the score, the better, hence code golf. So, people will take creative liberties with their language of choice, and you can solve these code golf solutions in whichever language you like. There are even purpose built programming languages just for solving code golf solutions. So, let's focus on kind of the second question. Is this practical? Yes and no. No, in that you don't want to use code golf for real life production issues because, well, it's very impractical. You create single, letter variable names and functions. It's very hard to read, and you sacrifice a lot of performance in addition to the readability in order to get the shortest solution. However, there's also a little bit of a silver lining with this. Yes, there's some practicality. In order to code golf effectively, you need to really know some underlying nuances of your programming languages of choice. And so for JavaScript, it requires some really in-depth array, string, object, and general language structure nuances for you to get everything just as concise as possible. So that's what code golf is and the practicality of it. Let's go ahead and jump into actually attempting some solutions. Alright, so here we are on the Code Golf StackExchange, where there is no shortage of questions being asked and answered. And I've found a good few introductory challenges. So just to show you what Code Golf is kind of like, this challenge is sorting an array of numbers, of integers, and you cannot use your language's built-in sorting mechanism. So if you wanted to use JavaScript's array.sort, you cannot, do so. So you have to kind of think a little outside of the box. And I was talking about some esoteric programming languages built strictly for the purpose of solving code golf, and 05AB1E is one of those such languages. So they have dedicated Unicode characters for virtually every function you could do. So you might have, this E, whichever homoglyph that represents of E. Let's see. That's not the standard Latin alphabet E, but I'm not getting the correct Unicode mapping for it. It looks a little more extended. Anyway, that might be a shortcut for a for loop. And Jelly is another such language. So people are taking an array and sorting it in increasing integer order with these. But let's go look at some general purpose programming languages. Python generally has some pretty good shortcut functionality. JavaScript is usually fairly decent, and we're going to be looking at some JavaScript examples here. Here we go, and this person is using some nested maps and filtration within the math minimum function. So looks like their answer might have some bugs, so it's not a fully functional solution. But here, this is re-implementing the array.sort function in the fewest amount of bytes possible. And yeah, it's actually not too terrible to redefine a sort of bubble or selection sort yourself, but doing it in fewer than 200 or 300 characters is a bit of a stretch, let alone hitting in at 50 characters. So that's kind of the joy of code golf. The one I want to try out is finding the highest unique digit in a string of numbers. And so with this series of test cases, I think they're assuming that each one of these is supposed to be a single digit integer. So you're not going to have this represent 19 if you have 1, 9. They're all going to be single digit integers. And what you have to do is look over this, find the numbers that have been used just once, aka unique in there, and if you have several, return the highest number. And they're not really like clear on the challenge if what you should do for the use case of all of them being the exact same, but work on creating some solutions. And I'm going to go ahead and copy in these test cases as well so we can test our code out with it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just dump a block comment here so that we can see all of these test cases and verify our test cases and results match up. All right. So I'm going to first solve this in a conventional way, in a way I probably would be okay with having in a production application with other people reading and writing to that repository. So I'm going to have this function be named highest unique digit. And I want to write TypeScript, but you don't actually see a lot of CodeGolf TypeScript solutions because a lot of the really bad abuses of the JavaScript language would get some very angry TypeScript warnings. So like I said earlier, we don't exactly use best practices with CodeGolf, but I will go ahead and do kind of a good attempt first. And so when you're trying to find like unique elements, usually what I go to with CodeGolf is using a set. You can just spread out an array, since it's iterable, into a set, which will give you just an iterable structure of unique elements. And then usually I spread that back into an array, and that's a really great shortcut. But that doesn't quite match what I need it to do here. I need to keep track of how many elements are found each time. And so this is more of like a histogram data structure. And so I'll create a histogram here. And then what I need to do is take each one of these strings and split it at each character so we can evaluate every single individual number and say and if you want to, instead of typing out like array.from, if you need to spread out something iterable into an array itself, well, I mean, that's something that the spread operator is a beautiful thing for, not only for CodeGolf, but also just in general purpose development. And we'll iterate over each character, and if the histogram at a specific character is truthy, if it exists, we'll go ahead and increment it by 1. So this way we're just kind of keeping track of the amount of times something has been found. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and initialize it with 1. So all right. And after that, that means we've safely tabulated the amount of times a certain number has been found in that. So let's go ahead and invoke this function, and I'll pass that in as an argument. And what I'll do is just log out the histogram. So I know that I said this problem definitely isn't practical, but it does teach you some good practical nuances, and we're going to be working with some of the object prototype functions like object.entries we'll need here, so we can iterate over this object just to make it iterable, so we can say like, hey, let's go ahead and maybe like filter and find just the numbers that have been found once. And that way we have our listing of, the unique digits. And so what I would do for that is object.entries histogram. And we'll use filter here. So object.entries is going to give us an array of arrays of all the key value pairs, with every key in each subarray as the first element, index position 0, and each value as index position 1. And so we're going to filter over all of those key value pair arrays. And we're going to return only where the key value pair at index position 1 is equal to 1. So that's the value itself. And you know what? I should probably array destructure the arguments here. Just to make it a little clearer. So for every subarray we have, I'm going to call the variable here character and then the variable here count. That makes it a lot less ambiguous. And I'll call that variable singles, and let's go ahead and log that out. And so we'll still have an array of arrays left over from object dot entries. So we'll need to map over it just to get these back. And then from there, we'll have an array, which we can then sort. So, and thankfully we can use just the sort function as is because these are presumed to be single-digit integers. And so we don't have to worry about creating our own sort function, because sort with JavaScript by default does alphabetical sort. So like if you had 1, 5, and 11 in an array, sorting it would yield 1, 11, 5, because that's alphabetically sorted numbers, and you would have to define your own sort function to mathematically rearrange everything. But thankfully, these are all single digits, so we don't have to worry about that. So here, singles.map for every character and count array pair, what we're going to return is just the character. And I've got a mismatch in parentheses. Oh, and I'm still on a console log. I was like, wait a sec. Because I was doing all of that inline within the console log. Let me do that so I get a little more space. Okay, so this is going to be our strict, string array here. And let's see. And like I said, I'm going to do this in kind of a real world solution first. So sort is mutative, so that's actually going to alter the singles array. Oh, and it's not going to be sorting in reverse alphabetical order either. So I do need to say, because this will sort it in like numerical order, but like 0 to 9. And so I need to actually utilize the index position, which if you're doing code golf, you don't exactly, want to save an array to a variable just so you can evaluate the array.length, because that gets very expensive in character count. Here I said it is not kind of the goal. Here we're doing kind of a readable solution. And now finally, this should yield us, let's see, our highest digit. So if we check out our logs here, this string will yield 7, and it yields undefined because I'm logging out singles.length and not singles.length minus 1. So the classic off by 1 error, we had an array out of bounds reference there. So there we have 7. Excellent. And then from there, any of our test cases, this should yield 9. That's 9. Let's see, 1, 2 should yield 2. And then all 9s, they said to return anything. Let's see, what do we actually return? I've got an empty array. And so what I return is the array at -1, in X position -1. So I return undefined, which they said, you can return whatever you want, but I was just trying to trace out how we had that handled. Okay, but that's kind of like the legitimate solution. And looking at our overall solution here, that is 512 characters, which is very, very large solution-wise. So let's go break this down and see how we can maybe make it a little more golfy. So you want to eliminate whitespace. You want to eliminate verbose variable names. You don't want functions. You instead want function expressions. You basically take every possible shortcut you can. So let's go ahead and start breaking this up into maybe a more golfy solution. And that lets us see some kind of general techniques that get applied. You also don't use like variable declarations whenever possible, so you let everything get automatically declared as a var, and you do a lot of default function argument assignments just to get everything. It's not great practices. Like I've said, you do code golf for fun and not necessarily cleanness. But here, I'm going to name our function u. It's going to be a function expression that returns, let's see, all of this. Let's see, s is going to be our string. Let's see. And then we need to break everything up and start doing some variable declarations. So histogram is going to be h. And then a strategy you should employ as well is doing multiple declarations all in one line whenever possible. Let's see. So everywhere I've used histogram, we need to go replace that with h. Everywhere I've used characters or chars, I'm going to change that to cs. And then here we'll move that like that. Get rid of white space here. If else statements, I only have one line of code on each of these, so you'll move those up and do inline blocks. And you can also do the same thing with for loops if you only have like one line inside of it to execute. That being said, we can still, like, since we're using semicolons here, move that up just for control flow sake, although my formatter will move it back. We'll adjust that before my finished solution here. But so all the saving to variables, definitely not doing that. We'll have to, let's see. Do just a bunch of chaining. So let's see here, we just chain on that map here. We don't use that like that. We just directly chain on dot sort here. Let's see, variable wise, we are using object.entries here. So if we're still using the histogram data structure, we are kind of stuck with that, very unfortunately. These variables here with the array destructure, you can just leave that as undefined. I'm pretty sure. We'll find out. I'll get the count variable shortcutted to C here. What we're going to do here is, let's see, I can't do just like a truthiness check here. If I wanted to filter out counts that weren't 0 for like another histogram data structure, if it were like preceded, just returning C here would be great for that. Yeah, crud. I don't think I can shortcut that filter here too much more. Let's go ahead and get rid of white space. Any sort of comparison with CodeGolf, definitely want to do a loose comparison map. We don't care about the count in this map. I don't know why I saved that in the first place. We'll go ahead and consolidate that to array destructuring. Save ourselves a little bit of space there. And then we've got some fun to go through here, unfortunately. So like I said, I don't want to save this to a variable because that is going to be saving this array to a variable, because having to reference that and then reference.length will occupy a good bit of space. Because right now we do have like our sorted array, and I have to get the element at the end of it. So like this is a fully, functional working solution, except for returning the last element in the array at the moment. So if I come over here and give it a test case by invoking view, oh, and since this is a function expression, so we do have it, but I don't have, that array saved. We could use like dot reverse, but that's also a lot of characters. So doing that would let us get the correct answer, but I am not in love with that solution. Let's see. So the sort and the last element here, how it's currently defined, is 20 characters. Let's see what defining our own sort is like. $20 characters, okay. Crud. Yeah, so we accomplished the same thing. This is a reverse sort. Ugh, that's annoying. Yeah. Still, saving it to a variable and referencing that array.length would end up being way more characters. So yeah, okay. Well, I think that's just about all I can do with this original function. And unfortunately, some of the inline stuff that I did means I can't do a fat arrow function implicit return. Although I could define these variables externally. Like, you don't have to do your code golf all in one function. Actually, yeah, it's way better. Because now I can just do an implicit return here. And then this actually doesn't receive a function argument. We could put a set of parentheses here, but that is 2 characters, so we can just put an empty function argument as well. So I could have left like s as is to represent nothing there. Oh, but wait. But I need a way of passing that to this. Let's see. Well, all this needs is the histogram itself. So we'll let this receive the histogram as an argument. So we'll have a separate function, expression, receive the string, and then that can execute the for loop. What we can do for these variable declarators is do default assignment operations for these here. So this is another strategy, default assignment operations, just to save yourself a few characters. Still, declaring another function expression, I don't know if it saves us any characters. You know, we get rid of the return keyword, but we do have 4 additional characters, 5, 6, 7, 8, versus RETURN. Yeah, I think this might actually be a character longer. Crud. So whenever possible, it's always like way, way, way better if you can get just a giant one-liner of everything. Let's revert this back to where it was. And then let's do a character count with it condensed how it should be. Okay, yeah. I'm okay-ish with this solution. So get rid of white space. My formatter is trying in vain to save all white space possible. All right, so we've got that condensed. We're going to go ahead and bring these all back into a single line for the for loop itself. So yet again, each new line that we remove is another, byte that we can eliminate. And then I don't have to have these parentheses encapsulating that, just my browser's preference. Or by browser, I mean VS Code's preference. Let's see. All right, let's see. Oh, we got a little more white space I can pull out. We'll see just exactly how much this solution occupies. 154 characters. Ugh, that's not a great solution at all. We'll go ahead and redefine it here and test it out again, just because this will let me keep my poor, terrible formatting, and we'll see what some of those use cases look like. Let's see, we should get 9 back here. Cool, cool. Let's see, we should get 7 with this, and we should get undefined with that. Cool. So the behavior is functioning exactly how we expected. I feel like the histogram structure is expensive space-wise because we have this if-else statement, then we have to use object.entries to iterate over it. So let's think. Like, I don't want to use sets because that won't get us what we need. But I might actually save this for another video. So I'll go out, practice this problem a little bit, and see if I have a better solution I can come up with. Regardless, this was our clean data structure solution that we then code golfed up. Oh, wait a sec. Now that I say that, we can do just that. Save ourselves a couple more characters. And that's a killer 2 down here. Okay. So we did consolidate it to a couple more characters. We got it down to 150. We might be able to eliminate spacing between for and if and their respective parentheses. Might be able to eliminate that white space altogether. So we likely have a valid solution under 150 at the moment. Cool, and we are getting the same results, so we did manage to, cut out that white space and save ourselves a couple more characters. But yeah, this is what code golf is all about, sacrificing readability and performance for the minimization of code as best as possible. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and try out maybe some other alternate approaches and see what I can think of, and maybe if I have a better solution, I'll do a part 2 for this highest integer challenge. But if not, there are always many, many, many more to go, so I'll happily do some more of these challenges in the future. But anyway, if you liked these, please go ahead, comment, subscribe, like, whatever. If you have a better solution yourself, please drop it in the comments. I'd love to see anybody, regardless if it's JavaScript or another language, but especially JavaScript, if you can get a shorter answer than me, that'd be stellar. But yeah, have fun, go code golf. It's fantastic, fun, goofy, and it really forces you to think a lot more creatively about your programming. But until the next edition, see you later.